Welcome into season 23 of Armchair Quarterback. I'm your host, David Allen, along with our guys, Guy Suttle and Rob Roop. Each week, we're going to talk about Cleveland County High School football. We'll talk a little college football, a little pro football. We'll mix it up, keep you hopping. But guys, 23 years on Armchair Quarterback. I thought I was about 23 years old, so I don't know what. I must have been an infant when we started this thing back in the day.
You did look very infant back then.
Yeah, absolutely. This gray gives me away at this point, no question about it. But we're going to get into our high school football. Just go ahead and get this out of the way. We are recording this on Monday the 11th. So we have the Cleveland County Football Jamboree this past Friday night. We'll talk about that, but we are not going to record next week due to the moving of the studio. We're going to be in a new home coming back 2 weeks from now when we'll talk more about the first week of the regular season, but just kind of give you an update on what we're talking about and why we don't mention this weekend's South Carolina Jamborees and some things like that, because obviously that has yet to take place. But the Cleveland County Football Jamboree did take place on Friday night over at Gardner Webb. All four teams in action. And Guy, the general consensus, I think the county as a whole went 2-2, was that some pretty good competition over there this year.
Yeah, I thought it was it was good competition. Plus, I think it's going to end up being the year of the quarterback, certainly for Cleveland County Schools with Eli Hamrick over at Crest and Lamb Farmer over at Shelby and the Bell kid over at Kings Mountain and Dixon over at Burns, Drew Dixon at Burns. I think it's going to be the year of the quarterback. And that was showcased a little bit on Friday night. Shelby put up a lot of points in a half of football, and I thought Eli had some good throws and some accurate passing, and tucked the ball and ran some. So it may be the year of the quarterback, even in Cleveland County.
Well, year of the quarterback, Rob, could be a really good thing, or it could be a really bad thing, depending on whether or not you're really excited about the one you got.
Well, and that's exactly right. I think that's the story of what we have this year. When you look at Shelby and Crest, they both return 1,000-yard, 2,000-yard passers, and then when I look at Burns and Kings Mountain, you're kind of having to start over with Armstrong being gone from Kings Mountain and Marshall McGowan transferring to Burns. So where do you go there? So it's the experience versus the non-experienced quarterback. Which one's going to settle in first?
No question about that. So speaking of the Burns Bulldogs, they took on the Corvian Community Charter School. We never heard of that crowd until last year, when all of a sudden there was a hole in the Jamboree and we needed somebody.
That's right.
And so Corvian stepped in last year and helped the Jamboree out, and they're back this year. And I mean, that was a 6-0 game that Burns scored, on not really the last play of the game, but late in the ball game to pull that one out 6-0.
And I think last year, maybe they snuck up on a few people. Like I said, we had never heard of them. And they end up going in the Western Finals to Mount Airy, beating Mount Airy, the two-time defending 1A state champion, and go and play Tarboro, which we all know about Tarboro. That's a different animal. Get beat in the state championship, but still, supposedly a first or second year school playing in the state championship, upending a two-time defending state champion in the Western Finals. So they're not going to sneak up on anybody. And I think that bodes well for Burns and how well they did against them in the Jamboree.
Yeah, the thing that impressed me with that Corvian team was they were huge up front. Mm-hmm. I was lucky enough to be down there. We fed the teams after the scrimmage and was down there talking to some of those kids, and they had some big offensive linemen. And it showed with that game, both those teams' defenses were well ahead of where they would be offensively. So it was really a hard-hitting football game, and I think a great scrimmage for both teams.
Rob, when you talk about Burns, obviously David Devine, his pedigree is on the defensive side of the football, a former coordinator before he became head coach. So you kind of expect Burns to be a hard-nosed defensive team, and that's what we saw on Friday night.
Yeah, exactly right. That's what they're going to have to hang their hat on this year. Able to stop guys. I think they're going to have to be physical up at the line of scrimmage. The key for me, and I know we talk about Drew Dixon and what he's going to do at quarterback, that's who was there Friday. But for me, the guy for Burns this year to make things go has got to be Max Davis. He's got to be the guy, he's going to get time on both sides of the ball, whether he's playing from the linebacker spot on defense, whether he's getting some carries out of the backfield, catching the football. Max Davis is going to have to be that Swiss Army knife for this Burns team.
So the Burns Bulldogs win that scrimmage on Friday night 6-0 over Corvian. Again, 2 quarters of play times 8 teams or 4 teams, 4 games, 4 quarters. So they ended up basically playing 2 ball games. Shelby taking on South Meck, and I think you guys both had a good idea that South Meck might have been the worst group that was there. It's hard to say it's a scrimmage, but Shelby certainly had no trouble with South Meck, Coach.
Yeah, and I thought Land looked very comfortable this year. I think we talked about it a little bit before we went on the air. May have gotten hit once, but which is going to bode well with that offensive line because they've got a lot of returning and good players there. Land looked very comfortable out there, though. He didn't look panicked or rushed. I thought that their offense was clicking on all cylinders. I really did. It was 34 points in 2 quarters.
Rob, Shelby had a couple of 7-on-7 wins this year. They won the King of the Queen City tournament over at UNC Charlotte. Did real well down at Northwestern as well. I think that one got canceled due to some rain situation after the playoff had started. But Shelby did well in that. Really, Land looked like he was playing in a 7-on-7 Friday night at the scrimmage.
Yeah, I think, again, it's obvious if Land's going to have time in the pocket with that group of receivers he's going to be able to throw to this year, they're going to be hard to slow down. And South Meck just did not have the guys in the secondary to match up with what Shelby was able to spread them out. They could go down the field, and there was nothing South Meck could do.
Well, and speaking of those guys, I know the Roseburg kid had a couple of touchdowns. J.J. Williams, I think he had a couple of touchdowns, so spread it around. Manuel Collins had a touchdown. I think, when you got 4 or 5 different folks can throw it to, you can certainly spread the ball around and keep the defense, no matter who it is, whether it's a good team or a bad team, you can keep them off balance.
Yeah, and I thought that, again, I thought Land Farmer was hitting them the mid-range, the 15 to 20-yard pass in stride, and they make one move and go the distance, and a couple of deep balls that look good. But he just seemed relaxed and comfortable, like you said, maybe in a 7-on-7 passing game.
And I tell you what, we talked about how good the offense looked for Shelby, and they did. Very impressed with the defense.
Oh, yeah.
I thought, especially again at the line of scrimmage, Shelby did a great job of really attacking South Meck, and South Meck they were not quick enough off the football. Shelby was in the backfield. So it's going to be really interesting to watch the Shelby defense this year as well. I know we get caught up in this Shelby offense. Their defense was really good Friday night.
Well, speaking of the Shelby defense, Coach Rashad Barkley, now the defensive coordinator after Chris Ward has gone back down to the coast. He was from that area, been up here with his wife while she was in school. Now they've gone back. I think he's at one of the Brunswick County schools now. But Coach Barkley's been with Shelby High since 2013. I know I hired him when we were there, so he's been there. He knows what the deal is. And I think Coach Wilbanks told me last week during an interview about it that, they're going to have to put some pressure on and maybe do some blitzing more. And Coach Barkley likes that style of defense, I believe.
Yeah, there's 2 ways to get a gap control defense, and that's always been Shelby's forte for the last 40 years, is a gap control defense. You are assigned this gap, and no one comes in your gap. And if you're big enough and strong enough and aggressive enough, you can stand there and fight and keep your gap. I think what Coach Barkley is going to end up doing is he's going to be able to zit and zat and those types of terms, and you're still gap control. It just may not be the person that you're lined up against, which makes it very difficult for offenses, especially offensive linemen, to block that scheme. We used to call it a windshield wiper scheme. You didn't know where it was coming from, and everybody's moving on the snap of the ball. And with Shelby's quickness, that could be a great strategy.
So 34-0, Shelby wins out in the scrimmage again on Friday night over South Meck. switching over now Crest and Myers Park and Crest. I mean, you might say if South Mecca was the worst team there, then you know that Myers Park is going to be a contender in 8A, and we're talking about, we'll talk about the 8A here. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Rob, I think you mentioned that Clinton Portis, the former Washington Redskin back in the day, that was an All-Pro at running back. He's got a kid or a couple of kids playing for Myers Park, and they were on the field doing well on Friday night as well.
When you're the largest school in the state of North Carolina, it shows when you walk out on the football field. And so it's like there's 150 kids standing on the sidelines, and that number of athletes they had. They were an impressive looking football team. And if you're Crest, you're disappointed you got out there with a 21-14 defeat, but you had a chance to even tie it up. Late, again, a controversial call in a scrimmage is hard to believe, but there was a long touchdown pass to Thompson to end that thing, and then the official couldn't give the number who held when he threw the holding flag, and everybody was wondering, well, who held? And the official said, I don't know the number. So, it's one of those deals. But if you're Chris, you had to feel good about, going toe-to-toe with Myers Park. They looked the part. They really fit the bill. And I'm interested now to see what happens with this Crest offense now with Eli Hamrick having a year in Coach Lloyd's system. That's one thing Coach Lloyd talked about in the offseason. He said he's been able to pick up some things now that we weren't doing before. And now they're starting at a different point in the season than they were last year. So I want to see what they will do offensively now, having that much time under their belt.
Of course, with Crest, obviously Hamrick coming back at quarterback after transferring in the middle of the season after Hurricane Helene last year. A lot of upheaval and all that kind of stuff, but he's settled in now. Of course, his dad was a state champion at Crest. But they lost Aiden Carson in that backfield, Coach, and that's something that they're going to have to find somebody that can tote the rock as well.
Yeah, and it, when you're talking about losing a kid that was getting 30 carries a game, and certainly in the tough ones when you needed him to, that gives you a little bit of sleepless nights. I mean, Crest has always ran their quarterback some, and I think Eli will. Rob would tell you, the name just loses. I lose it every time. The running back that Crest has right now adds a different element in that he's got speed. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. You can even line him up and empty in a slot, and he's a threat there. So,
Mike Edwards.
Yeah, Mike Edwards. I mean, they've got to establish who that 30 carries a game is going to be, though. That's one thing that Coach Lloyd's going to have to, and I'm sure he's got a plan. So.
Well, and if you can get 30 carries a game in high school or anywhere, you must be doing something right.
That's
and,
right.
Obviously, Carson was able to do that for him last year, and he's graduated now.
And you think, too, once you get into these games, like I said, you get in a scrimmage here, you get into those big playoff games, you get in those big conference games, then you start seeing the Lyric Pettis, you start seeing the Pluto Surratt. Those guys move over to the offensive side of the ball.
That's true.
Start doing some different things there as well. So, some different looks. And just like in the scrimmage, I know Coach, I think Chris played 35 guys in the scrimmage the other night. So, just a chance to get out there and get guys on the field. But, you start to see, like we said, those things kind of close up a little bit. Who's going to make those plays for you and who's going to get those opportunities?
Of course, I know we've talked about Myers Park being impressive, being a big team, a lot of kids and that type of thing. But, Crest able to hold their own on defense, Coach, and obviously that's going to be a key for them this year as well.
Well, and any time that you're talking about Cleveland County football, the bigger the team or the more notoriety of the team, the more of a challenge it is to Cleveland County teams. There's not a Cleveland County team that's going to back down from I don't want to say a fight, but you're not going to back down from the competition that's in front of you. And that's one thing that is great about Cleveland County football. They're not going to be afraid to go out there and play whomever. And that showed on Friday night. And like you said, Coach Lloyd, he probably could have kept, 15, 18, 22 players out there. May have been a little bit of difference in the score. But because he did play 35, 36 players during that scrimmage, gets them ready. And they're going to have those. I know the first 2 weeks of the season, temperatures have been a lot cooler. It's still going to get back hot. We call, and where you were talking about where some of those defensive back guys come over to offense, those are October games when the high is 75 and the game time temperature is 65. So, you know, that when the temperature starts cooling down, then that's when your athletes start playing both sides of the ball.
So Crest, 21-14, they fall to Myers Park, but again, Myers Park, the biggest school in the state, and we're going to talk about the classification breakdown coming up in our second segment. Final game of the group, or the final game we're going to discuss, Kings Mountain 14-7, they fall to Monroe, and Monroe is a team that knocked Shelby out of the playoffs last year in 2A. Coach, they're going to be in 5A this year, so they're moving up. Well, technically not moving up 3 classifications, but again, we'll get into that classification business in a minute. But, all of a sudden, Rob, Kings Mountain's looking for a quarterback and a running back as Josiah Hill down at Gaffney. You mentioned the Armstrong kid traveling or transferring over to Ashbrook. And so Coach Herron, I don't know if he was expecting that, but that's what he's dealing with.
Yeah, I think the one that really – I think both, surprised Josiah Hill. You expect he's going to be your bellwether guy running the football, and he goes to Gaffney. And now T.J. Armstrong transfers over to Ashbrook, which is surprising because Ashbrook had a quarterback. So you're going to be able to see how they play there as well. I know a lot of people high on K.J. Bell, who is the quarterback, only a sophomore for Kings Mountain this coming year. Big, tall kid, really athletic. So I think the potential's there, but you're going to have growing pains. You can't help but have growing pains having a young quarterback and starting over maybe a little bit on offense. What I was really impressed with Kings Mountain in the scrimmage defensively, again, that's where Kings Mountain's going to be able to hang their hat on. When I watch Feemster, Odoms, those kind of kids out there, they just line up and hit you. And they hit you over and over again to the point where you're just tired of being hit. And I think you're going to see that a lot with Kings Mountain this year. They're going to really, I think, slow the game down, allow their quarterback to work a little bit. When he can get it out to Tex Vaughn, let Vaughn do his thing. But I think you're going to see a really stout Kings Mountain defense this year.
Coach, we mentioned the transfers out. Now you're talking about transfers in. Tyler Morgan from Shelby is now at Kings Mountain at wide receiver, and you got Tex Vaughn, who was, all world last year for them.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much you put it in his range, and he was going up to get it. So they've got a couple of really good folks to get the football to, so that's going to be an important part of their football game.
Yeah, Tex Vaughn is going to help the sophomore quarterback situation, the growing pains, if you want to call it that, a tremendous amount, because you just have to get it in the area or in the neighborhood, as they would say, turning double play at second in the neighborhood. But, it still comes down to, and I agree with Rob, that defensively, Kings Mountain has been impressive in that situation or on that side of the ball over the last 3 years. And early, I think the defense is going to have to hold some people to 1 or 2 touchdowns for Kings Mountain to be successful. And with Kings Mountain and Burns opening up, and I know I'm jumping ahead to the next segment.
No, it's okay.
But, you're going to start pitting both of them's forte against each other. We know Burns is going to be stout defensively, and Kings Mountain's going to be good defensively. So now you're going to have 2 coaches that are known for their defenses going head to head. It may be a low-scoring affair.
And one thing you talked about, and David, you just mentioned it, I think it's something we have to realize now too, in the new day of athletics, not just high school athletics, college athletics, whatever. We mentioned the transfer portal, and it's having an impact, and it's going to. We talk about Kings Mountain's picked up some kids. Get a kid from Shelby. They got a running back from Northwest Cabarrus. I look at Crest. Majay Thompson goes from Shelby back to Crest. And Grady Nodine, who started linebacker for Crest last year, is now at Shelby. And Drew Dixon, who I thought would have been a lifer kid at Shelby, has been now, last year transferred to Burns for baseball. Now could be quarterback up there. Just the whole landscape of where you play is changing. And, whether you'll say it's a good thing, bad thing, why do kids go where they go, whatever the case may be, but it's going to have an impact as we move along.
No question about it. Well, hey, we've killed 20 minutes of our first episode, and we hadn't had a break yet. So let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about that first week of the regular season. We'll do that right after this. You're watching Armchair Quarterback.
The only prediction I'd make is I'd be pretty willing to bet I won't be doing it in 20 more years.
My question is, where's our residual checks?
144 have taken Republican ballots, and Wes and 2 others have taken Libertarian.
Pravda, however, PBS, however.
Wes.
West.
Ladies
and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Chef Paul Prudhomme once said, "You don't need a silver fork to eat good food." Well, on Cleveland County Kitchen, we don't have a silver fork, but we sure do serve up lots of good food. Hi, I'm Deborah Blanton. I hope you'll join me for the next Cleveland County Kitchen. Each month, we offer a complete farm-to-table experience. We visit local growers, we learn about nutrition, and wrap things up with wonderful meals prepared by our guest chefs. It's a lot of fun. I hope you'll join me for the next Cleveland County Kitchen.
Welcome back in for our season opener of Armchair Quarterback. 23 years. Wow, it's hard to believe. David Allen, I'm the co-host of Two Daves and a Mic, the podcast. Check us out on Spotify and wherever else you get your podcast. And I'm posting stuff all the time, so check my Facebook page. You can click on it from there too. But anyway, Rob Root, Guy Suttle in with us, and we're back for a season. And hey, listen, we're taping this a week early because of the studio move, and you'll see when the next time you see us on Armchair Quarterback, we'll be in our new studio. We'll give you a tour maybe. But hey, listen, we got first week games coming up, and they are 2 good ones because they're both county matchups. You got Shelby going to Kings Mountain. You got Crest and Burns. Boys, it don't get any better than that. And then you flip-flop them the second week and do it all over again.
And to me, this is even bigger. Not taking anything away from any other teams that are playing, but Burns and Shelby need Crest and Kings Mountain.
Yes.
When I look at that conference, they need these 2 non-conference games big time, but not only for competition for themselves, but to kind of get those numbers for the RPI to get that even better now as well, because I believe, if I understand correctly, the RPI is going to be the only thing that figures into your playoff seed now. Not whether you win a conference, not whatever you do, it's going to be straight RPI. You need these kind of games.
Well, no question about that. And new conferences, new classifications, we'll talk about that. We'll try to get that in. We're already at 25 minutes. I don't know if we're going to get it in today or not, but Coach, these are 2 big ball games because they're as everybody used to say, they're the ones on the schedule. But these are county rivals. They don't get any. I mean, the Battle of Buffalo Creek in week 1, we had that the last couple years, but still, it's a big ball game for both teams. And then, of course, Crest and Burns. What do you say about that one? Both of those are haymaker type of throwing ball games, and it's right out of the gate for both teams.
Yeah, and I can remember going all the way back to 2010, Coach Barnes' first game as head coach at Crest, and it was against Burns, and the viciousness that was going on in the first quarter, and he's like, "What is going on?" I said, "These 2 don't like each other." I mean, it's different. It's a different ball game in that you open up with Crest Burns, Shelby Kings Mountain, which I'm assuming is still the longest running rivalry in the state, continuous.
I think so.
It is a matchup of wheels, a matchup of pride, any kind of cliche that you could throw at it. It is.
And I think both of these games, I think you're going to see Kings Mountain and Burns both face their games the same way. Both of them want to slow the game down.
Yep.
I think Burns and Kings Mountain both want to slow the game down. They're going to want to get it into the line of scrimmage. They're going to want to get it done up front. If they can do that, that's why I think both those teams are going to have to do to have a chance to win, because I think Shelby and Crest both, what they return offensively, if they get going downhill, if the snowball gets going, you could get ran over.
Yeah, very, very, very true. I think with Burns and Crest, punt's not a bad play. If Burns could go out there, if you could tell Coach Devine right now that he could go out there and get 2 first downs, probably have to punt in the 3rd series, how much time that would eat off the clock. And it keeps Eli Hamrick and his host of players on the sideline. So, yeah, I think that would slow down the game. That's where you say that punt's not a bad play. You run those, 9 plays, and punt is not a bad situation.
So those are our 2 matchups for week number 1, and we'll you see them right there. Crest at Burns, Shelby at Kings Mountain. It'll be a great week for Cleveland County football. And as we say every year, doesn't matter which one of those 2 you go to and who you're a fan of, but make sure you go to the football game, buy you a $10 ticket, and go support these athletic programs. Because as we say all the time, football it's the engine that drives the train for all of the other programs in the athletic department, and they need your support, no question about it. Let's quickly talk about the breakdown, though, as we go to 8 classifications. It's not as unusual in football only because we were used to that split stuff that we did for years where you had big 2A, little 2A, big 3A, little 3A. The difference is now everybody is in their own separate classification. So here's Shelby in 3, Burns in 4, Crest in 5, Kings Mountain in 6. And because of that, now we have all these convoluted conferences. Shelby's in a 2-3-4 combination. Crest and Kings Mountain are in a 5-6 combination.
The thing that excites me the most about this, and I think if there's any county that will do it, is Cleveland County, 4 state champions in 1 year. I'll take that all the time.
That's
baby.
right. Well, and the other thing with these different classifications, the way they're set up, and I think this is the reason the RPI is going to have to be used, is like you're talking about, Shelby being in 3 different a conference that is 3 different classifications. The only way they could do that is through the RPI. So, it's these first 2 games for Shelby and Burns are so important. Not saying that they're not important for Crest and Kings Mountain, but with the RPI ranking, it certainly does really help them in November to have those, if they get wins, to have those notches in their belt.
That's one reason that Chris is playing a team like Weddington. Coach Lloyd talked about, we need that game because that's only going to improve our RPI. Win or lose, if you play a team like Weddington, your RPI is better because of it.
Right.
Well, and again, we're about out of time, but there's a couple of games in that Burns and Shelby conference again, still with Highland Tech in there that just makes you do what I'm doing right now, just shaking your head and just like, So we'll see how it works out in football. And, of course, that 8 classifications in football now is 8 classifications everywhere. So it's going to definitely make a difference in all the other – hey, listen, I got to quit talking. We're out of time. Thanks for joining us right here on Armchair Quarterback. We'll see you next week.